You know what time it is? Time to talk Broncos, Eagles on a Friday, as we do every single week. We're going to talk to Strap Harris himself, the underdog, all-decade player, Chris Harris Jr., myself, Brandon Krisztal. Football Friday starts now. Chris, let's look backwards before we go forward. Sorry. Let's look backward. Monday night, it was a bit of a snooze fest, if you will, but I don't think anybody in Broncos country cared that it wasn't a great game on TV because their team did exactly what they were supposed to do. 28-3, embarrassing the Bengals. I don't really know what the Bengals have left in the tank if they don't make some sort of move at quarterback. You got $70 million wrapped up in wide receivers. The Broncos defense was awesome. We'll dig into those numbers, but let's just off the top here, get your initial thoughts. What did you think about how the Broncos performed on their first national stage of the season?
I think they did exactly what they were supposed to do: come out there and dominate and play great on defense. Got to see Bo make some tough throws, tight windows, and make some big plays. I love the big throw to Cortland down the seam. That was nice, and him being able to shield the DB and use his body. So I think it was a good performance. You know, the DNs were definitely bringing it. And that's what you're supposed to do versus a backup quarterback. You're supposed to dominate him.
I know you kind of talked about it a little bit, and I don't want to get bogged down, and maybe we can do it when we talk a little more defense. But when you talk about those DNs, and we talked about this last week too, with money downs or when you have to have those closers, the Broncos seem to have one in Bonitto, and with Coop as that tag team partner. I think you even mentioned they kind of remind you of Von Miller and D. Ware. They're not the exact same players. D. Ware was obviously a Hall of Fame pass rusher, and I don't know if we're ready to put Jonathan Cooper on that trajectory. But when you look across the league in terms of a 1-2 punch and not even getting into the guys that back them up, do they at least remind you of the tone setters that you guys had? And I guess why do they remind you of that? And then when you marry that with what you have on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. When you have a duo like that, I would say trio because I count Ellis in there. Right, but really we had four, when you look at Shane Ray and you look at Shaquille Barrett and with D Ware and Vaughn. So that was just, they can have a nice rotation. When you have that, you're able to keep those edge guys healthy, keep them fresh and able to, get off the ball like they are. The way they're getting off the ball is very similar to D Ware and Vaughn. I think where they're different at is that they're not on Vaughn and D Ware's level at the on the run defense wise. I think Von and D Ware, not only were they great pass rushers, they were great in the run defense.
Yeah, I think Coop is stout in the run and kind of has been. But, it will continue to tell you it's a work in progress. But you think about where he was as a rookie compared to where he is now in year 4, you're not – yes, they're going to run at him more than they're going to run at Coop. But with the help he has up front and with the linebackers, man, I can't wait to see Dre Greenlaw as well as I think Sternad's played at times. But the idea of what they can be defensively once Greenlaw is healthy, but especially talk about what Hufanga gives you too in terms of flying down. I don't want to get into a player-by-player breakdown, and we're going to talk about Hufanga when we jump in the film room. But as much as we love your guys, Boss and D. Stu, I think a healthy Hufanga who was an all-pro in year 2, he's in a different – it feels like he has the potential to be in a different category than those guys. Those guys are really good players, but, it feels like several Pro Bowls could be in his future if he can stay healthy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way he plays, he's very physical. He's smart. He just is always in the right place. And not only is that, he's a playmaker. So, it's we still got to see a little bit more, Stu and TJ were able to go get a lot of picks, sacks, forced fumbles, though. So, right now I'm seeing them doing all the correct things, but now we got to start creating turnovers.
Yeah, and that's something that they're statistically okay. They're 14th best in the league, but when you talk about just 4 takeaways with a defense that has this quality in terms of playmaking ability at all 3 levels, you'd like to see the ball taken away. I remember when Vic Fangio was a head coach here, and we're going to talk about Vic when we get into Philly. But he had Ed Donatel, obviously, as his D coordinator. And Ed said he was quick to say they are takeaways. They are not turnovers. We are taking the ball away from the offense. So when the defense of the team you're cheering for, they are taking the ball away. And so, we can talk about the defense all day. They are living up to their billing, certainly against a bad quarterback. but the offense came to play for the first time this year, top to bottom, in terms of putting up big numbers. Offense was balanced, run, pass. What were your favorite things that stood out about what they did with Bo Nix and company on that side of the ball?
Man, just seeing J.K. Dobbins, get the run game going. First time having a 100-yard running back since, was it 2022? So being able to have him, give some insurance to, Bo Nix, to where he can rely on a run game, rely on a guy back there, that's going to be a playmaker. And him and Harvey, I think they're doing a good job. I like the way how coach is kind of managing them. I wish, last game we started to get JK a little bit more touches, and doing that, right, we did better on third down, right? I think the Broncos converted their first 6 third downs. Defensively, they got off the field. They did great on third down there also. So when you do that, that's when you can get those 100-yard games, because now your running backs can get in a rhythm and they can get more touches.
Obviously, the offense was clicking better than it has, and the Bengals' bad defense had something to do with it, and then the offense not helping the defense. It is funny, though, as you're watching that Bengals D and you see what Lou Anarumo has done with the Colts. I mean, Lou was out of work for about a day before Shane Steichen hired him there in Indy, and then they bring in Al Golden from Notre Dame. You think, okay, I don't know if Al Golden's a better coach than Lou Anarumo, but as we've heard coaches say forever, it's not always about the X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and Joes. And beyond, obviously, Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, we don't know about. He's banged up, the first rounder. That's not a good defense. There's not a lot of players. The only one that stood out to me, if I asked you one player that stood out to you from the Bengals defense, I'm gonna hold my hands down below with the number, and you tell me, and I'm gonna put it up at the same time. As far as other than Hendrickson, who's the one guy that you're like, okay, he could play on most teams?
I would probably say Dax Hill, the safety, nickel. He could in corner, just because he's versatile. He can play all over the field.
For me. Yeah, I'm holding up 2 4s because the rookie linebacker, Knight.
He's good too. I like him.
I thought he's the only, like, okay, I could see that guy playing on every other team. But the rest of their roster, they got
about 3 guys on defense.
Yeah, it's a roster essentially full of backups, especially without Shamar Stewart. But so that being said, they obviously are able to do whatever they wanted offensively. Bo didn't need to use his legs too much to pick up yards. I think he only finished with 10 yards rushing, although there were more yards out there. But he obviously spreading it around, throws to 10 different receivers, completes it to 9 of them. And so you love to see that. But what you love to see even more is the success in the run game. And I'll be honest, it's hard unless you're tracking it, snap by snap in real time, to see exactly how they divvy up when the running backs are in, other than obvious, they're on the goal line, so-and-so is getting it, or third down, this guy's going to be in there a little bit more. So I want you to hear Sean Payton gave us this when asked about the running back success. And, you had 16 carries for Dobbins. He goes for 101. Harvey has the 14 carries plus a couple more catches, the touchdown catch. But let's hear from Sean Payton as to what they did differently that I'm not sure everybody noticed as it was happening, but certainly after the fact, like, okay, this has to be their approach going forward.
One thing we did different tonight, there were certain tags that put either one in, but we gave them series. And I think that helped both of them. We're certainly is easier to call plays, and both of them got in good rhythms. There were hard-fought yardage. I thought, those guys both ran hard. I thought we blocked them well. We pushed them well. And so we'll look at the film, but it was good to have a 100-yard rusher. It was good to run. I don't know how many attempts we had, but that typically happens with a big lead. I'd love to have that many rushing attempts, but it's usually a byproduct of being ahead.
And also when you have the ball, you're just going to have more plays, because Bo still threw it 42 times to go with 30 rushes by the running backs, plus Bo's carry here and there. Bidet had, I think, a carry, or Marvin certainly did on a end around. And so you'll take the 33, 34 carries with you don't want it to be 40 to 20 or 40 to 18, but you'll take 42 to 30. That means you've got the ball plenty. But were you catching that in real time that, this is a Dobbins? Obviously Dobbins had the stretch where he gets it down inside the red zone and then Harvey comes in and finishes it off. But could you tell? Because I think it's hard, whether you're at the stadium or on TV, to be like, they're going multiple series or they're giving it to. Could you see that though? Because I didn't, but it makes a lot of sense, and you got to think that's the way they're going to go. At least
I couldn't really tell if they changed that up this game. It was definitely hard to tell, but whatever's working, it worked last game, and hopefully, this is the ultimate test going to play the champs in Philly at their house with a stout defensive line and an all-pro linebacker. So, let's see if that type of style and rotating those guys, keeping them in rhythm per series works versus the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to have the same success against Philly statistically, right? Without it being just a great day for them. I'm not saying they can't, but one of the, I think, pleasant surprises, and I don't think people were down on the running back room with Bidet. I think they were hopeful Estime would take a step, and then obviously the draft of R.J. Harvey. But there was a thought like, okay, do they add a vet? And they waited till June. We started to hear rumblings. And then the last week of their offseason program, J.K. Dobbins makes it in here for mandatory minicamp.
Yeah.
And I think for a number of reasons, if you spend any time around him, you see the joy he plays with. He's doing interviews in Spanish, or doing his best to do interviews in Spanish. And we remember, if you're old enough, you remember how good he was at Ohio State, and think, okay, if he could do this in the pros, and just injuries have kept him from really fulfilling that. But by adding him with what he brings as a vet, clearly he loves being the guy to help RJ Harvey and wants as much success for him. But before we hear from Dobbins, I'm just curious what you think of him, because I don't know how well you know him. I mean, maybe you played against him once or twice, but he's definitely been a pleasant surprise and a really valuable pickup for not a lot of money that came later in the offseason and has obviously made an impression.
I think I caught Dobbins with the Ravens. He played for the Ravens, right?
Yeah.
I think I caught him with the Ravens earlier in his career, but he just kept having those, major injuries and setbacks. But he's always been a guy that's been productive. Every year that if he's able to play and he's available, he's been productive. So I think that's a steal for him to come to Denver, especially after the great year he had with the Chargers. But you see the Chargers running backs, you can't say they didn't make a bad choice by letting them go, because Hampton, you see what he did last week. So, but I like the way Dobbins runs. He's able to pick his spots. He showed that he has great hands out the backfield also, great balance, and showed his athleticism. So I think he still has a lot left in the tank. So I'm excited to see him continue to raise his game to another level.
Yeah, so again, I think Broncos country is just getting to know him. Plenty of people saw the clip of him doing the interview in more Spanglish than straight Spanish, but you can tell he's having fun with John Sutcliffe there from ESPN Deportes. But here's Dobbins' post game on just what was working, the combo of he and Harvey.
We're getting there. We're getting there for sure. We can get better. Like, I can be better. Today I had some runs where I could have broken a tackle and went to the crib, as we say in the locker room. And I'll get better. I'm going to keep working on that. And it's just going to get better each and every week. And we feed off of each other. Pass game, run game. Nobody can stop us if we keep doing what we did tonight.
I will say this. I'm not one to pick on anyone, but it feels like he and LeBron have the same barber. And so you may want to look into other options. But the idea that they can get better, I'm not sure that comes this week. Although when you look at the Eagles' defense, we know how stout they are. But they're 21st in rush defense right now. Part of that is when you're a good team and you often can have a lead, you're not going to have the ball run against you as much. But here, so what do you think are the opportunities for this offense against a Vic Fangio defense? I know we're going to get deeper into the Eagles, but in terms of being able to stout, and then they're going to see Aaron Glenn and the Jets defense next week, and then the Giants, who are pretty stout on defense, at least personnel wise. But can Monday night be a springboard, or was it kind of matchup? I don't say matchup dependent, but they took advantage of a good matchup.
The Broncos' 2 wins have been over, bad offenses. We've seen the Titans, how they've looked this season. Their quarterback just called them ass. And then, we got the backup with Browning. So this will be a great test, to be able to see what they really are. The Chargers was a great test. But this will be the biggest one so far, at all the games. Just just by the defense that they're going to have to face, knowing Fangio knows their system or knows how to play Sean Payton. And, but I think they can win this game. I think this is definitely a winnable game. The Eagles don't always play good at home. If their offense comes out there, defense comes out hot, they'll start booing that team. And then, Bo and them can probably get some momentum with that. But they're going to have to take care of the football. I think that's just the main key thing in the game. You can't throw red zone touchdowns, Bo. You gotta take care of the football this week.
Yeah, and so I think that the one thing that they're going to try to do is continue to have that balance, but they are going to rely on the defense and try to slow the Eagles down. The Eagles, I think, had 2 yards of offense in the second half against the Bucs. Now they had a solid lead, but I think you're right. They are sometimes ripe for the picking, and the home crowd can turn on you. We know that their tone will be set by Bonitto in a lot of ways. So I wanted to find a clip before we go into the film room, and we've got some obviously good clips to look at. But before we go into the film room, Bonitto now has 4.5 sacks, so more than one a game by a half. He thought he was funny. He thought he was going to get the first one on his own. He's like, and I see Coops ahead of me, so I had to catch up. He says he wins the get-off competition, he and Jonah, every week. But then Coop, I guess, I saw where in the Denver Post, or Luke Evans from the Post on Twitter said that Coop's get-off was clocked the fastest by the next-gen stats. So even if Nick's winning, but as you're seeing Nick come into his own, I saw this silly clip from Kay Adams' show where she was talking to the Bussin' with the Boys guys, Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. Like, yeah, I think he's going to get into that. Like, is he where Myles Garrett and TJ Watt and Aiden Hutchinson are? I mean, he was 4th in the league in sacks and was a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Like, do the football watching public, do they need to see more from Bonitto, or is he in that class? I understand year after year, but is he as much of a game wrecker as those guys right now?
I don't think so either. I think he is definitely a game wrecker though. He's the best, edge rusher on the team, and he's been very productive over the last couple of years. But to be TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, those guys are getting the whole game plan. The whole offensive game plan is going away from them. I don't know if offenses are doing that yet with Bonitto. I know that they are chipping them and bringing extra blockers sometimes to them. But when you got to play a Myles Garrett, a TJ Watt, when we used to play JJ, those guys that are just freaks, you got to kind of change your whole offensive scheme when you face those guys. So I don't know if Bonitto's at that level yet, but he is still a great player.
Well, and so coming off his great game, he and Cooper, of course, their lockers next to each other. They're having a little bit of fun because we talked to Cooper and we talked to Bonitto. So you're going to see this clip and you're going to hear a question from our pal Rod Mackey. But I wanted to pick this one specifically, one, because you see them having fun, but then 2, because of what he says. So here was Nick Bonitto to start his post-game press conference.
Nick Bonitto, best pass rusher in the NFL. And, yeah, take it away, Nick.
What's the most impressive stat, do you think, of what you guys did tonight? All the sacks, keeping them out of the end zone, or the fact that after that first drive, they never got across the 50, Nick?
I'm going to answer your question in 1 second. First, I want to give a shout-out to Riley Moss. They went at him early in the game.
They did.
He told me he loved this shit. He loved it when they keep coming at him. He did his thing. They went away from it. Shout-out to Riley Moss.
So how about that? And the reason I thought it was cool was Bonitto has another big game, and the very first thing that he's looking to do is shout his guy out. And when you have teammates or a team that's playing for each other, that's something Sean Payton often talks about. Bo Nix talked about it last week. We talked about it a little bit. But, he has this big game, and the first thing he wants to do is make a point of saying, shout out to Riley Moss.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the culture over there is just, 100% better. It was very toxic, especially at the end of Mr. Bolin after he passed. So just to see it from the top down, the locker room, everybody gels with each other. The coaches they all can communicate with each other. It just seems like it's a loving atmosphere over there, and everybody gets along. And usually when you have a strong locker room, you usually have a great chance to win a Super Bowl or to go far or have a successful season. So that's a good sign for them guys to continue to, they're going to fight for each other when it gets hard. And that's usually how you can win a lot of games, man, when you have that locker room intact like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the one thing, we talked about it, we haven't had it in a couple of weeks, that Sean Payton likes to do after wins. This is just a thing he brought from New Orleans, but I'm sure you remember Club Dub. Not that you had.
They still were doing it in New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm saying, they weren't necessarily a Super Bowl team that you were on there your final year with the Saints, but Club Dub was a thing. And so you see the pictures the Broncos put out and stuff, because they don't put a video out, but they put out pictures, and you see the smoke machine, and, the music's going loud, and we can hear it when we're in the post-game press conference room waiting for coach to come in. Hey, we're going to head to the film room in just a little bit, but right now, let's head to the city of brotherly love here on this Football Friday and go behind enemy lines with a Philadelphia native who she went from covering the Flyers to covering the Eagles for the hometown newspaper in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Olivia Reiner, she gets on the beat there, and they win a Super Bowl. So I think she now, according to her friends and family, probably has to stay on the beat going forward. So we're going to bring Olivia in here shortly and get her take on this Eagles team, because at 4-0, I don't know if they're blowing people away, but they certainly are obviously a really good team. So here, I guess I forgot. Let's go officially behind enemy lines. We can't shortchange our production staff. There's Olivia. So, Olivia, I don't know, before we get going to the football stuff, is it true? Have your friends and family said you have to stay on this beat at least forever, or until they feel like, oh, but it's not your fault that they're not winning anymore?
That's a good point. I haven't had many people be like, Olivia, you are the reason why the Eagles won the Super Bowl, because simply that is obviously not true. But I will say I have most of my stops. I've covered the Flyers, and I've covered the Green Bay Packers as well. And it's always within that first year that a head coach gets fired. And that has not been the case for the Eagles. So perhaps something is changing.
Well, what's funny about that, and that's maybe where we can start, is coming off the year they had 2 years ago, Nick Sirianni was on a bit of a hot seat, but then they go on the run that they were able to and go out and make up for the loss 2 years ago in some ways, not for every single player, but win that Super Bowl. So how much has I know that it doesn't take long for fans to turn on a coach in Philly, right? We could ask Doc Rivers, we could ask a lot of coaches, but how much runway does Nick Sirianni have now after winning that Super Bowl?
I think a lot. I think he deserves and has earned the benefit of the doubt after leading the Eagles to the Super Bowl now twice in his tenure, including the big win. So I think he has earned that right to keep his job. And I don't think that right now there are any questions of whether or not he should be in it, considering the Eagles are 4-0. The Eagles are still an interesting 4-0. It has not been a perfect start to the season. There are still plenty of things that they need to clean up on both sides of the ball. I think the most concerning area right now is on offense, both in terms of the passing game and in the run game. But right now, I think that the city has a lot of faith that Nick Sirianni is the one to continue to lead them forward. I think some of the questions right now really have been zeroed in on his offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, who has a really long history with Nick Sirianni and has been in the building in various roles, predominantly as the Eagles passing game coordinator, now stepping into this job as a first-time offensive coordinator. I think he has gotten a lot of the scrutiny, not so much Nick Sirianni this season.
I think this is a huge game for Jalen Hurts. How do you see him faring versus Broncos defense? They're going to be coming. They have great pass rushers. Their secondary played a lot better the last couple of weeks. They're going to be Pat Surtain on AJ Brown matchup to be able to eliminate his perfect option, number one option. How do you see the pressure of him this week going against the Broncos defense?
I think it's going to be a really big challenge, a big test for this Eagles offense going up against the Broncos defense. It's been a really hard start for the season for the Eagles. They've gone up against a lot of opponents that they have seen a lot over the last several years. Obviously a divisional opponent like the Dallas Cowboys, but they've also seen a ton of the Rams. They've seen a ton of the Buccaneers, and I think it'll be interesting to see them go up against more of an uncommon opponent in the Broncos, but still a really tough opponent, especially given the current state of the offense, where you have the chemistry with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts right now. It seems like something is a little bit off, especially in this last game against the Buccaneers when Brown was targeted 9 times, only had 2 receptions for 6 or 7 yards. It's not going to be the recipe for success going forward. And that's a really tough opponent going up against Pat Surtain, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So that's the easy button throws might not always be there. The things that AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts have, some of the reliable things. I think they're still looking for some of those easy answers in this Eagles offense. And then, of course, one of the easiest answers last year was handing off the ball to Saquon Barkley, and that really hasn't been there for this Eagles offense either. So I don't know how they get back on track. This isn't necessarily I think this is going to be a hard game for them to get back on track, given the caliber of this Broncos defense. I think the offensive line has struggled throughout the start of the season, especially on the interior. If there's any strength that the Eagles offensive line does have, it's along the edges. So I'm not so entirely concerned about Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, so long as Lane Johnson is healthy enough to play. He dropped out of this last week's game with a shoulder injury. So that could still potentially be a question mark. He was out there at practice on Thursday. But no, I think the interior is where some of those question marks are, with Cam Jurgens, with Landon Dickerson in particular, playing through injury, with Tyler Steen being a new face on the offensive line at right guard, his first year as a starter. That's kind of where some of the concerns are right now for the Eagles offensive line. So yeah, they have their work cut out for them this week against the Broncos.
Right. What do you think, AJ Brown? So AJ Brown is a major topic, everywhere. Do you think it's really affecting the locker room, or is this just are we just blowing it out of proportion in the media?
I'm not so sure if it's affecting the locker room so much. I think maybe more of the concern is just around AJ Brown and his happiness in Philadelphia. He came out and said that he is happy in Philly. This is his home. He wants to be here. He put those qualms to bed earlier in the week. And now it's just a matter of just trying to figure out what is the best path forward for this passing game. Because at the end of the day, two catches for just a handful of yards for AJ Brown isn't going to cut it for this Eagles offense. And they know that, even though they have been winning, and I think they have celebrated their wins. There's a lot to be proud of. Being a 4-0 team, one of just two in the NFL to start the season, they also know that this isn't going to be a sustainable way to continue winning if they aren't getting the ball in their playmakers' hands, like AJ Brown, like Saquon Barkley, and getting them going. So I think the big question is how do they get AJ Brown going? Are there more easy button throws that they can press, easy buttons that they can press to get him the ball and to do what he does best, which is generate yards after the catch over the middle of the field. So I think that's a big question for Kevin Patullo to be able to solve, and also for Jalen Hurts as his quarterback too. He had a really strong first half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was nearly flawless as a passer, and then in the second half he went 0 for 8 passing. Didn't connect on a single pass to any of his receivers. Most predominantly, AJ Brown was targeted 6 times in the second half of that game and didn't catch the ball once. So they've got a lot of work cut out for them. But as long as AJ Brown is bought in, which by all means, by everything he has said to us since his viral tweets after the game, he has indicated that he is bought into the team and that he wants to be here and that he wants to figure out the best path forward for this offense. That I think that's all that matters, and we can only take his word for it.
Olivia, thank you so much for the time. I look forward to seeing you in the press box at the Lincoln. Even though I'm visiting you, I'll still buy lunch in the press box if you'll let me on Sunday. And you can follow Olivia on X, formerly known as Twitter, at her name inverted, the way Cortland Sutton does it, at Reiner Olivia, there to keep up with everything going on with the Eagles leading into the game. So thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime, guys.
All right, we need to jump into the film room, but I do want to just kind of talk about what the Eagles are coming off of that real quick. When you look at these numbers, Chris, 30th in yards per game, 30th in yards per play. They are still 7th in points per game. We know a block kick has something to do, like that number can be a little skewed because defense can help with that. 113 rushing yards a game. That's middle of the league, 116. The Broncos now are 5th in the league in rushing after the big performance the other night. And then passing, they're 31st in the league. And, she touched on the lack of success that they've had in finding AJ Brown and connecting with Jalen Hurts. Do you think it's just growing pains for the offensive line she talked about? When you've seen the Eagles and looked at them so far, what do you think is keeping their offense from looking like it did when they were rolling last year?
It's just opening it up. They're very predictable in the first couple plays. There's not a lot of play action with Jalen Hurts. They're not getting into the RPO game to get AJ Brown and those guys easy throws. And the routes that he is getting, they're very predictable. Basic. He only lines up at a couple places. AJ Brown is usually at the X and by himself. So he got to get moved around. Sometimes you might need to put him in the slot. You need to move him all over the field to get this guy involved. So I would say right now they're just a very basic offense. They very predictable, and they got to find a way to be able to change it up.
Okay, so what can the Broncos do that we know the Broncos do well that can keep the Eagles at bay and make it another tough game for them before they get that 2-game stretch with the Giants? I also didn't realize that, just as she was saying that. The Giants will play the Eagles Thursday. Nobody likes Thursday. The Broncos will, of course, be just getting ready for a London game, have to fly home from London, no bye week. The Eagles have had 10 days before they come. Or I mean, the Giants will have had 10 days. So that'll be something to get into later. Yeah. But what can the Broncos do as a defense to attack this work in progress offense that's trying to find its identity?
Yeah, I see VJ putting Pat on AJ Brown and blitzing, sitting in the house, playing the run, playing a lot of cover one, playing a lot of man, and being able to attack Jalen Hurts. Probably have a spy in there, but I don't see them playing too much coverage. I see them bringing it a lot and giving them a lot of different blitzes, a lot of different looks. He's gonna definitely have to run for his life this weekend.
Okay, and then let's jump to the other side of the ball. You played for Vic Fangio for a year. He called the defense, obviously, while he was the head coach. One of my favorite all-time moments was after a practice, Derek Wolfe said that the offense scored and Vic extended the period because he wanted the defense to get a stop. And Derek said he had to remind Vic that he's the coach of the whole team, not just the coach of the defense. But what are the hallmarks of the Vic Fangio defense? And even though they haven't been great, they're still good in some areas. They're third in the league in takeaways with Christian Parker there, who joined Vic in Philly. They're second in fumble recoveries, or fifth overall in taking the ball away. But what are the tenets of a Vic defense that we will see no matter who the personnel is?
I mean, Vic has everything. He's going to bring blitzes. He's going to play coverage. He's been blitzing a little bit more this year compared to last year with this Eagles team. He has a great front. When you play against Vic Fangio, his specialty is the run game, is the D-line and the linebackers. That's where Vic really, makes his mark and really coaches those guys. He'll sit in the meeting with the D-line every practice. So he's a D-line coach, essentially. So when you add that in there, it's going to be tough on the Broncos to run the football. We have to try. We have to work this play action. We got to get Bo outside the pocket, get him in some, sprint outs, get him in some play action boots to where he can make some throws. So we see him with Baker. Baker has some success with that. Try to find some plays that, the Bucs had some success with, and try to capitalize on those this weekend.
It's funny that you mentioned Baker, because when asked about Bo Nix, Vic compared him to Baker Mayfield. And so, but he just kind of said that. And then there was a follow-up, and we actually have Vic talking here about Bo. What are the comparisons to, obviously, a really good, successful quarterback, and what Baker Mayfield has been, especially late here in Tampa? How does he see the similarities?
I mean, he's a scrambler. He's a competitor. He'll throw the ball in tight places. He runs their offense really well. I think Sean's done a great job bringing him along. And they got their quarterback for the future. They looked long and hard for many years, and have got one.
The one that he didn't want to. You could read between the lines on that, couldn't you? Right?
That was a silent jab right there, huh?
Well, and I don't know if it was even towards anyone. I don't think it was at John or at George. It was, man, if I had Bo Nix, maybe I'd be here, or I'd be in Denver still as the head coach. Although, the case can be made that is Vic just a great coordinator, a Hall of Fame level coordinator, but all of the stuff that being a head coach entails wasn't necessarily his strongest suit.
I think he can be a head coach for sure. He definitely has very knowledgeable. He grew to be a more players coach as the season went on, but I think he's still capable. You know, he's better than a lot of coaches in this league. Just being honest, you know, having you prepared defensively. He's one of the top coaches. So I got a lot of respect for his system and what he does, and similar to Wade Phillips. VJ runs a lot of the same stuff Fangio does. So you know, in the NFL and the defensive world, a lot of things overlap. But I think Fangio is definitely capable of being head coach.
All right, we'll see if he gets another chance if he wants to take it. Maybe this is his last job. He's back home in Philly, near where he grew up, and so we'll see. Although, you know, we do expect Vance Joseph, who is a lot younger than Vic, to certainly pursue head coaching opportunities. If the defense keeps playing like this, maybe he'll get one at the end of this season. So speaking of that defense, let's look at what they did really well. There's plenty to choose from, but we isolated a couple of plays. Let's head into the film room. All right, so the first play, and I think as somebody who made a living in the slot, why don't you take us through this?
Broncos starting out with man. You know, you get a RPO. It was a great play by Jaquan McMillan. Being able to just turn that shoulder, right, get underneath the block and make a play, right? That's a great play. It's the plays you got to make as a nickelback. The receiver's not attacking you, so he's able to close that or turn that shoulder, give him the back, and just go and make the play. That's pretty much – that's piss poor effort by T. Higgins right there. You know, if I'm Jamar Chase, I'm definitely mad.
When you knew a screen was coming, or what were the key indicators of a screen coming, I guess? Was it based on formation, based on personnel, gut feel, like, oh, they like screen, it's probably coming here? Because you look for, I mean, from the snap, Higgins is at least showing you that it's a screen, not to him. But
that's it right there. That's a perfect look right there with that running back with the stack to the boundary. So when I seen that, there's a play I had probably my last year there. They ran that same play with DeAndre Hopkins in Houston. I came up and tackled him. Same screen, same play. That's kind of like an NFL, you know, first 15 type formation right there. Most teams run it, you know. He's seen the numbers and threw it.
All right, let's jump to the next play. And so instead of featuring PS2, we're featuring all of his secondary teammates here.
Yes, sir. We got a man coverage right here. I can tell just by the motioning. And that's a great play right here by Jones. You know, being able to help PS2 right here. They're in the stack. So, but you get motion. When you get those motions, that lets you know it's man by the nickel running over. And that was a great route by Chase, you know, but B. Jones was there to be able to see the quarterback sprinting out to the sideline, sprinting out to the right. As a corner or as a safety, you usually go, right? So he sees sprint out, he goes, and he's able to make a play on the ball. So that's great. That's a great play. But see, sometimes now you got to be careful. They'll run that 7, that corner route, then they'll come back to the post when they know that safety's playing aggressive like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Eagles run that same type of sprint out, but run a post on Pat this weekend. So Pat right here, he has to get on that hip. He overruns him a little bit. Chase is able to run a great route, get open. So that's something, you know, Pat might, you know, clean up next week, not being so overrunning that route, trying to get on that hip, because you might see it again this week.
Yeah, I automatically have flashbacks, especially right there on the east sideline, on the west sideline, on the Broncos sideline, of Devontae Adams, kind of the worst game Pat ever had as a Bronco a couple years ago. He definitely hit him with that post
Same
corner, and yeah, he had Pat, but there wasn't the safety help. It shows you what Brandon Jones is doing. All right, let's jump to the next play, because you heard Nick Bonitto talk about Riley Moss, and there were several Riley Moss plays we could have picked.
Right here, they're man-to-man again. Moss has great eyes. You know, they run these type of plays to try to see if the corner checking out his eyes. They bring him in to block. Riley Moss is, you know, clued in on that receiver. You don't go until you don't play the run until that receiver makes contact with the linebacker or the safety. You know, that's always the rule as a DB. So I think Moss had great eyes. Was able to make a play, pretty much cause the incompletion, and you know, that's a great play. Now we got to look at this guy running wide open across the middle. We didn't have good eyes on the backside. The quarterback, I think he was just already set in stone that he was throwing this route on Moss. But we got to be able to, we got to get locked in when we're playing man and have good eyes.
All right, let's get to one final play here in the film room. And we talked about him a little earlier, but Talanoa Hufanga has been worth every single penny they've paid him.
Right. Oh, man, that's a great play, being able to play the screen. When you see those double A looks, right? We see a double A look. When you see that, teams like screens. That's an easy throw, because especially if you got a young quarterback, he can't really read it out. So the Broncos are able to come out the blitz, play a aggressive style on the screen, and Hufanga, he has great reactions. He always reacts on the play. He knows what's going on out there. He's very alert, and him just going through that tight end didn't want to block him at all. Right? He's just a different dog out there, and that's what Vance Joseph does, though. He's gonna bring different looks, and right there, that's just a double A gap look that turns into cover 3, and then they were able to make plays off of it.
Yeah, when you say double A gap look, you see obviously Jahdae Barron's in there because they're in nickel dime coverage, and Alex Singleton. Yeah. So it looks like, oh, we're coming right over the middle, and then everyone drops to their respective.
Yeah, that's a Vance Joseph staple. Everybody that wants to watch the Broncos, and they want to learn about defenses and the guy's staple. Vance Joseph staples is having the 2 linebackers right there in that A gap, right there on over the center between those guards. So he'll come out of it and play cover 3. He can come out of it and play cover 2. They can play man. They can blitz them. They got all different things. He probably has 20 to 30 calls off that same look for you fans out there that want to understand more of the defensive playbook.
All right, that was our trip inside the film room. We'll get to our predictions here quickly. There aren't a lot of games. Obviously, we're excited about Broncos-Eagles, where the Eagles are a slight favorite. Our pal Shelby Harris, who you talk to every single week on We're the Harrises, they were taking off for London today. The Broncos will be there right after it, and they are 3.5-point underdogs to the Vikings. And Dylan Gabriel is starting, so that's going to be one to at least keep an eye on. Texans-Ravens is interesting because of Cooper Rush and the injuries there with the Ravens. The Texans are actually 2.5-point favorites in Baltimore. Do you think the Texans go up and steal a win?
Yeah, I got the Texans, and I was going to say, man, I feel bad for Gabriel having to go against is that Brian Flores?
Yeah, Brian Flores' defense.
Oh, man, he's going to heat him up.
Grenard and those guys going to be getting after it. He's going to
see every type of blitz you can think of out the gate. So I definitely got the Vikings winning that, and then I'll go with the Texans.
And then another couple interesting ones real quick. You just give me kind of one-word short answers. The Bucs are actually 2.5-point favorites at Seattle coming off that loss. I won't be surprised. Or 3.5-point. I'm sorry. Bucs are 3.5-point underdogs. Seahawks are favorite. I think the Bucs might bounce back. I might have to take the Bucs on that. But how do you see that one?
I'm gonna go with Seattle.
Yeah. All right. Can't be mad at that. Commanders against the Chargers. I think the Chargers bounce back. The Chargers are 2.5-point favorites, but they aren't going to have Joe Alt, and we already know they don't have Slater. So maybe the Dan Quinn defense does get after him. Do you think the Chargers hold on, or you're a secret Chargers
homer
I'm gonna
go with the Commanders this week. Jaden Daniels coming back from injury. I'm gonna go with the Reds or the Commanders.
And then you've got the Monday night game, Jacksonville hosting one for the first time in a long. I mean, I don't even know last time. Was Mark Brunell the quarterback? Maybe in the Byron Leftwich era they hosted a Monday night game, but it's been a minute. They're 3.5-point dogs to the Chiefs. It's funny for this statement that the Chiefs made. I mean, Lamar missed a lot of that game. Roquan Smith leaves. Wiggins leaves. Like, let's pump the brakes a little on the statement that was made. It's like saying the Broncos made a statement against the Bengals. Like, you're not getting 100% version, but I still think that the Chiefs might have found that gear, and so I think they may go in and give it to Jacksonville a little bit.
I say the Chiefs win a close one, field goal, very close. Jacksonville's defense is playing pretty solid, so I just cannot trust Trevor Lawrence to ever beat Patrick Mahomes. I don't trust it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And so then the game that we obviously care the most about around here, Broncos 3.5-point dogs in Philly, the Vic Fangio Bowl, if you will. And so they're going to go there. No, it's a hostile crowd, early game, one of only 2 early games the Broncos play. They're flying Friday. They didn't practice Wednesday, flying Friday, obviously, later on this afternoon to get acclimated. Then they will fly to London Sunday night, a little little bit after the game. They're going to go back to the hotel and then take off. But, it's a 10-day road trip. I guess I'm thinking of myself, 9 days for me, 10 for them. Do you see the Broncos shocking the world and stealing this win?
Yeah, I got the Broncos winning this game. Early morning game in Philly. I'm telling you, they don't early morning games. That they're still a little sleep over there on the East Coast. So I think Broncos can go over there and steal that game and make it hard on Jalen Hurts.
I'm there with you. I think this is when they steal to make up for those two tough losses, the Colts and the Chargers. The Eagles, obviously they talk about the birds and bird gang. They're the birds. Well, they're also the boo birds. They will be out quickly there. I've been to a couple games there. The link, they will turn on you very quickly. But we know that no one's going to turn on you, Chris. No one's going to turn on me here on a football Friday. This has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to not only a fun Broncos game Sunday, but then talking to you next week from across the pond. We will do football Fridays. I will be in England next Friday when we chat about what's going on over there, as the Broncos will be in London to take on the Jets. But enjoy this. Thanks so much for the time, of course. And we will see you next week on Football Fridays. Thanks to David as well, helping us on the other side of the glass, and John. But Chris, has been another fun one. And hopefully our Jayhawks bounce back too.
Come on, man. We got to get a win this week.
It's been Football Fridays. He's Chris Harris on BK. It's Guerrilla Sports.